second week talking about sound management practices. And this week we're going to introduce you to some tools that can help you achieve some of the points we talked about last week. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So last week we were talking about the actual management processes, but it might lack some of the structure. So whilst the last video was extremely useful, it would be entirely understandable if you're sitting there going, "Oh, that's great, but how do I do it?" So what we're going to talk about today, some of those tools that will help you put a bit of structure in place. There's a couple we really like. One of those we'll probably labour on for a bit because it can be really useful actually. Simo, you're a big fan, so you'll probably talk a lot at that point. So I'll do more of the talking right now. No,
Okay.
But let's have a look at just a few sort of different areas we can have a look at just to get stuck in there, because essentially managing, like, just performance reviews and all the rest of it, it's such a buzzwordy sort of weird area. If you ever Google it or anything like that, you get hit with so much stuff telling you this is the best way to soundly manage your business, and you've got, I don't know, what are they, 360 appraisals? That's like one of the ones I used to have to do a lot. Management by objectives. You got all the graphical interfaces where you got all these graphs and stuff, and you have to maintain above lines and things like that. But I mean, even in its simplest form, I'm a big fan of a checklist. Depends what level of the company you're at. But my employees that maybe have got a very simple, straightforward job, checklist will be enough to go manage them. We all know that you've got a go-kart track. Some of the roles down there ain't going to do checklist. But it's perhaps why your safety briefing is checklist style, because it has to be simple and understood. For more complex areas though, where there's not just a couple of pedals and a steering wheel, I'm probably going to need something a little bit more complex to manage it. So there we go.
G'day, I'm Simo, that's Ed, and you're watching the Fastline Track Race Show, where we talk all things karting and business. Excellent. This week, the tools that can help you create sounder management practices.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Let's kick it off with the first one.
Cool.
Benchmarking.
Woohoo! So, well, this is a big area I get really interested in. There's an accountant I used to hang out with, because riveting conversation. I'm only joking. He used to have benchmarking for pretty much every sector, and I think it's information that some accountants in the UK have. So what it allowed you to do was to sort of tap in a few figures, revenue, profits, how many people are working for you, and all the rest of it. And then it enabled you to get an idea of where you sat as an average within your sector. And that was quite interesting, because I think if you're somewhere in the middle or at the top, you don't worry too much. But if you're way down the bottom, you probably want to find out what's going on. But how do you go and benchmark? Well, spectacular.
Yeah, it is tough in the go-kart industry, because there are quite a few geographical areas where it's almost like a taboo to speak to your competitors.
Crazy.
Even if you are thousands of miles apart. It is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then there are other ones where they come together regularly and talk about business. Business. But you're quite right. The spectacular is a format where you can come and chat with other track owners and gauge where you sit.
Yeah, I think if I was a go-kart track owner and I was sat next to somebody turning a couple of $1 million, and they turn around and happily volunteered that their gross profit margin was 12% higher than I was managing, I'd probably consider every penny I'd spent well spent if they could just explain to me over the next few minutes how they're doing that. Because if I can benchmark against one of my fellow sector, service sector colleagues, and they can tell me where I've missed maybe a point or two, that would easily be worth six figures by the time all the tax is netted out, and that's straight on my bottom line for dividends later in the year. Thank you very much.
I would be cornering that guy, and I would be asking some bloody good questions over lunch.
I'd find out where they live, where they work from. I'd fly over the next weekend. I'd just camp on their doorstep till they told me how to go and generate money. I mean, in all seriousness, I probably would. A couple $100,000 a year just for going and finding out what they're doing differently. I would be knocking on the door to find out what's going on. So benchmarking can help you immensely. I suppose the difficult bit is where you get the information from, but That's why you need to come to the Karting Spectacular.
That is a good reason. It's got me thinking. Benchmarking. I've got an idea. Tell you later.
Well, he'll tell me later. We'll tell you in a few weeks.
The second tool that can help is forecasting.
Yeah, forecasting. So people do relatively little forecasting. I'm a big fan of cash flow forecasting. Not always easy to do when you get into it, but after a while you get the hang of it and you go, wow, this is amazing. So I use cash flow as an indicator, but forecasting can be anything. It could be numbers of bumps on seats at your go-kart track. It could be the number of drinks that you're selling. It could be anything. But what it helps is to just help manage the process to, well, growth potentially, or if not revenue growth, profit. And I can also start to factor in other equations. Let's imagine for a moment we've got a falling market. If I can just hold sales in a falling market, I've immediately changed the gearing in my business financially, and I'm starting to generate more cash really with fewer resources or in a difficult market. We're doing pretty well. I don't know if I've just got that last sentence right, but we'll keep it in the video because we're off. We're just talking in the flow. But forecasting can help you immensely.
Yeah, we forecast revenue. We forecast demand.
Mm-hmm.
You got it.
Yes.
When it takes 3 to 6 months to get your product in the door from order,
yep,
you've got a bloody forecast.
Well, that's right. You're probably in the Northern Hemisphere. You're probably not buying in loads of cold beers right now because you're going to have to wait until the summer turns up before people are going and asking for a beer for the track race. Same with ice creams, whatever else you're selling. So you're probably doing elements of this already. You can take that forward even into what's happening with an employee. We talked in a previous video about the power of just getting an extra sale in an hour for the next go-kart race from people as they're walking off the track. Has a huge knock-on effect, and it's such a fantastic management tool. And if you can forecast off that with just a simple, this is what I want you to do, crack it, the world is suddenly your oyster.
Absolutely. Performance monitoring.
Performance. I'm going to go for performance. Sorry. Performance monitoring is a really good way to do that. The simplest way to do it, just watch what they're doing. But so it depends on sort of track owner you are. It's entirely possible some of you get down the track rarely. I think that would be possible, which is okay. I'd applaud it. But I still want somebody I know and trust, hopefully like. But I want them in there looking at what's going on and reporting back. I really do think if you just put me somewhere where I can see one of your employees talking openly and genuinely in a physical, proper environment, just talking to your customer for about 4 or 5 minutes, I'll let you know whether you've got the right employee or whether they need a bit of training, right? And it's not some superpower Ed has. Talk about myself in the third person for a moment. Everybody can do this, right? You could just sit and listen and get so much from performance monitoring. So the simplest way to do it is just get your eyeballs on what's really going on in your own company regularly. Become a customer at your own track for a short while.
Yeah, that helps.
Yeah, and and listen to the words they're using and what they're really saying, and really empathise with the customer and really work out whether they've just understood from what's just been said what you hope they've, whether the information's been imparted correctly. So make sure we're not filling in information for our customers without actually telling them.
A lot of the performance monitoring here is numbers.
Yeah.
There's number of calls made, number of meaningful calls had, number of sales made. We do a lot of listening into calls.
Yeah.
For coaching purposes. But we have started to just look at body language.
Yeah, well, I'm a huge fan of this. Well, I'm going to be careful. I'm not a huge, if you go and read these bloody body language books, I think they're absolutely close to useful. All I'm interested in is change in body language, and you can normally get a feeling whether it's a negative or positive change, and I think that's as good as it gets, really. I'm going to have some people calling in, telling me or writing in under this, going, no, nonsense, you can tell everything from the way you scratched your left ear there. Oh, yeah, really? But yeah, body language is massive. You don't want your front of house walking up to people like that, do you?
Yeah.
You want somebody who's going to be shoulder back a little bit, smile, engage with them, hold the eye line, hold the gaze. And if that's not happening, there you go. That's going to be a problem. Just going back slightly to number. I like numbers though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the
they're the easiest one to understand.
Yes, you're either below or above, There's very clear.
There's no. It's black and white. There's no shades of grey. Whereas if you're interpreting body language, if you're listening into phone conversations, it's sort of like, well, there is sort of no right and wrong answer.
Mm. You have to interpret it a little.
Yeah.
I've had a few conversations with the team here, and I'm going, like, they said this. Do you think that they got that from what you just said there?
Mm.
And then there's sometimes a conversation about what you think that's what they're asking for.
Mm.
And you replay the conversation. So much can get lost in just a few words. And I'm going, I know they said something like, here, what they're really asking is on a bigger picture. It's not such a clear cut, easy one to measure necessarily.
Number 4?
For KPIs.
KPIs,
One of those TLAs, the 3-letter acronyms that seem to follow us everywhere we go, but a key performance indicator. So I think we're probably going to get into talking a bit more about this, because the next
that's a whole video in itself.
Yeah, KPIs is just
because you've got different KPIs. There's no one set load of KPIs. You're going to have KPIs for your sales people. They're probably going to be things like number of calls, maybe number of meaningful calls, number of sales, number of inbound calls.
Number of times you mentioned another product or service that the customer may not be aware of.
Yeah. Also, you can go to the mechanics bay. Now, this could be kart running hours, kart maintenance hours.
Running time.
Yeah.
You can have all sorts going on in there. There's probably a spine of maintenance, and then there's probably the trauma unit. And there's just been a collision or two, so they've hit something. Hopefully not somebody, but like a cart or a wall potentially. So what happens there, and then how does that all get managed?
Yeah. KPIs. Huge.
It's just such a massive topic, and if you know what they already, because you've probably been in corporate land, if you have, then you'll already know. I don't really want to go back into corporate land. You're not running back to embrace it, are you?
No. Gotta wear a suit. Bloody hell.
I think things have changed since we were in the offices.
Right, they don't have to wear suits.
Not often now. No. You get away with all sorts these days.
Well, these days you get to wear your slippers.
Absolutely.
You work from home.
Yeah. Well, didn't you wear your slippers in the office on a Friday? We used to do that, and then we'd have kipper tie Fridays. You were just in the wrong offices.
No, obviously. Obviously. So, and the last point.
Well, not just the last point, but probably the best
point. The best point. That's my favourite.
We're going to labour on this a little bit, because I think there's a lot of use for this in the go-kart industry. So we've gone through the first 4 because we just want to point out there's other ways to measure this stuff. Yep. But here's a way that we absolutely bloody love. I've got a lot of time for, and Simo's going to take the floor, I suspect, with this, because you're very passionate about this. So
it's a weekly scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a small sheet of paper.
Yep.
To keep score, and there's a number of rules around this. It's sort of like you want no more than 10 numbers on this score sheet, right? It must be trackable weekly.
Yep.
All right. We do it over a fortnight.
Yep.
All right.
I'm a huge fan of fortnightly planning, but that's for another video.
Yeah. Every number on that scorecard needs a target.
Right, so why 10 and why does it have a meaning?
Well, if you go more than 10, it just becomes complex. It's unmanageable. It's sort of like, where do you focus?
Yeah.
So narrow it down to the numbers. This is point number 9.
Yeah.
So we'll go there first. We'll just jump all over the place.
That's cool.
Because it's the numbers that will make a real difference.
Yeah.
To your business.
Sure, and also to the person who's got the scorecard, they've got something that's manageable, where if they achieve everything on their scorecard, they know that they've added to the business positively. Yeah.
So I'm going to rely on my notes here. The target must be set so it means something. So it's a meaningful target. It's not just sort of, oh yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
it's got to be achievable, doesn't it? You know. And now you also need to track the input measures and output measures.
Cool.
Right. So an input measure is something like marketing spend.
Sure.
So you're out there on Facebook,
Uh-huh.
right? So it's the money that an input measure is the money that you spend on Facebook ads.
Yep.
An output measure is something like the leads
Number of leads that
you get from, you know, another input measure might be outbound telephone calls.
Yep.
Right, and an output measure would be SaaS.
Cool.
So
another one for tracks could be numbers of bums on seats racing today, number of people who rebooked today before they left the track. Be a really good one.
yeah, so you know you've got to have both those that you know make the difference, makes that needle go. And every number you colour code it.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's green, it means you've achieved it.
Yep.
If you're red, well, you haven't.
Yeah.
So it's really visible. You can look at it and you just go, yeah, done well there. Oh, I messed up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, how do I change it?
Excellent.
Yeah.
The temptation is to put amber in the middle.
Yeah. You know, avoid amber.
You just don't want any ambiguity over.
It's either you've got your target or you ain't got your target.
Yeah, so you want to carefully define what's on your scorecard so that there's a clear green or red. So it could be in the wording, or it could just be, quite often employees are very good at trying to get a bit of wiggle room so they don't get told to just
If you worked out you know to grow the business to where you want, you need to get 5 customers. It could be rebooking the Kart track. I need 5 customers a week to rebook.
Yeah.
If you get 4, you haven't got 5. So I don't want to see yellow there.
Yeah.
I want to see red.
Yeah, I don't want. I did 4 on 2 days and
Yeah.
green on 3. So it's say that you did it. It's like, no, you didn't.
No.
Oh, I only missed by a couple. Yeah, that's 100.
There is no
people
gold medal for second place, is there? You know, what is helpful in a business like such as a kart track owner or such as here is you can assign an owner at every one of those numbers, and it'd be a different person.
Cool.
You know, so I could assign, if one of my numbers was outbound calls, I could assign the ownership of that number to my sales manager.
Okay.
He's responsible for achieving that. I don't have to be responsible for all the numbers.
Sure.
You know, packages out the door, or RMAs.
Yeah.
Your returns and things like that. We want a low number there.
Yeah.
I can task that to my general manager, maybe.
Sure. That
So-
then forms part of their scorecards.
Yeah. And the 10th point, because we've already done 9.
Excellent.
The 10th point is that have a physical copy.
Sure.
You know, things are good on the computer and all of that, but I think it makes a big difference when it's there and it's tangible. You got to hold it.
Well, do you know that there's a real power in the pen, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
You get a pen, and there's something that happens when you sit and write. Okay, it doesn't matter how fast you write, and people go, "I can type faster than I can write." It doesn't matter. But it's the actual physical act of doing it, and that movement of your hand and understanding helps you somehow get into whatever it is you're writing, but particularly around goals, measurement on scorecards, anything like that that really matters to you. Get a pen and paper. Don't just type it and think you've done a great job, because it almost has like there's almost like kinesthetic, is it? It's just that there's not that connection, that feeling, emotive connection.
You don't learn it. Typing it is not the learning process. There is not as great as writing. I find.
Yeah, so I think some of the new millennials were very comfortable typing everything out onto their phones, whereas there's a real, I think they need to understand that there's a real power in pen and paper still, which is why I suspect that even though they predicted a paperless office for me years ago, still haven't had it.
No.
But I don't think I ever want one. I think I want pen and paper forever.
Some really wise man once said, "The pen is mightier than the sword."
We'll have to go and find out who said that. if it's Anon claiming it.
What, as one of your Edisms?
Yeah, why not? I came out with a couple yesterday, didn't I?
Yeah.
But that's for another day.
Should I tell them the shit one? One you told me not to write down?
No, it was banter one, wasn't it? We'll have to have a list of Edisms. I come out with all these crazy comments just in talking. Simo calls them Edisms and he writes them down. So there's a few out there, but hey ho.
Yeah. Well, that's probably a good point to finish.
Yep.
So it's Uru from me.
Cheerio from me.
And we'll see you next week.
Look forward to it. Bye.
Ciao.